tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to continue our special explanations about Chittaja Rūpas, the analysis on Chittaja Rūpas. So far we have discussed three topics related to this analysis. In the beginning we talked how Chittaja Rūpas are maintaining the bodily postures, how the Rūpas produced by the Chitta are holding the body without letting it to drop down, or without letting the posture that was taken from the previous Chittas, without letting it to break. Then we talked about deliberate actions, that is voluntary activities, the actions that we do having thought. So verbal and physical intimation is involved, and Chitta makes the actual activities, it causes the activities. And in this regard, we have to understand that we are not advocating a doctrine of self. The consciousness itself is a non-self entity, and when the consciousness arises, Chittaja Rūpas arise together with it, and there is a strange phenomenon through which the Chittaja Rūpas are modified based on the intention of the consciousness, and that modification itself is called Kaya Viññati. It's an influence of the Chitta on the Chittaja Rūpas, so they behave according to the in coordination with the intention of the Chitta. Then we talked about instinctive reactions. Instinctive reactions are the things that we happen to do out of a sudden, as a response to the unexpected stimuli. In most of the cases, unpleasant stimuli, we quickly react to it, and we talked what are the main reasons for this, and these activities are also deliberate. There's a consciousness involved in it, though it happens in a snap of a second. The consciousness is very rapid, so it is able to intake the stimuli and to react to it in a sudden. This could happen when someone is when we are accustomed to certain defilements. When our mind is influenced by certain defilements, we may react very quickly. So for instance, if we happen to smell unpleasant smell, suddenly we close our noses, and if we happen to feel an unpleasant touch, suddenly we react to this. And sometimes when we see very pleasant, attractive objects, we tend to turn towards and look for the second time. So we seems to be doing it naturally. And the same thing happens to some people who are not well restrained. They would smash a mosquito who is biting themselves. So who is biting them. So these instinctive activities are sometimes triggered by defilements that we have developed over the time. At the same time, there is another defilement that is inherited within us, is the attachment to the life. Due to this attachment, whenever we suspect or whenever we sense a danger to our lives, we react in a sudden. We doesn't even take time to think about it. We just react out of a sudden, and this too is a deliberate activity triggered by the desire to live. And in most of such cases, we tend to feel the fear of losing ourselves, or the fear of getting damaged or harmed. And how do we prove that these are deliberate activities? It's because after a long period of training the mind, we are able or capable of stopping these activities. We could inhibit these activities. And especially when one attains arahanthood, even a sudden unexpected danger to the life, still the arahant would not feel fear or would not react as a putujana does. So it shows that when you train the mind, you are able to stop these instinctive activities. That is not to say when an arahant's leg is burnt out of a sudden, he would not take it back. He would take it back, he would not let it burn, but not in a way that we would react, not in a way that we would avoid the danger. In our case, our entire body, entire mind rejects this, and we are disliking what is happening. We are against that object, and we want to save ourselves. So there is a lot of involvement of fear due to attachment. But in Arahant's case, even though he would react to an unpleasant stimuli, he may do it out of a sudden. But the surrounding features of the mind or the body are different, because when it happens to us, our heartbeat increases, the speed of the breathing increases, and certain hormones releases in our body. So this kind of changes would not happen in an Arahant, because he's not afraid of anything that is happening to him. So I gave you some similes that one Arahant who was blind was staying in the monastery while the other monks went for Pindapata in the ancient Mahāvihāra, and he was reputed to be an Arahant, and a king wanted to test him, and so he came kneeling, crawling. He came crawling towards the monk without making any noise, and he didn't know that someone was coming, and he was a blind person, and then suddenly he grabbed his leg, who was sitting. But the commentators say not even a slightest shake happened. He didn't shook. There was no excitement or no surprise, and he suddenly recognized that a hand has touched him, and he just said, he just asked, "Who are you? Who is there?" So the king felt that this person is not reacting even to a unpleasant sudden stimuli that would harm him. So therefore, these instinctive reactions are deliberate, and they are done with intention. For this, I distributed the same handout with some modifications. If you go to the page number 2, you can see a small part was added to it. The disposition of the mind and instinctive reaction. Sometimes we have a disposition in the mind. Disposition is our mind is ready, in a readiness to react. We can call it a potential readiness. So it's always in watch. That can happen due to few reasons. If we have trained a certain defilement or certain habits, our mind is always ready or inclined in order to perform that activity. And the next reason is the desire to live. When we have when you have developed the desire, and that's the most precious thing that we have in our lives, and we crave for it more than anything else. So therefore, automatically the mind is disposed to protect it, and is disposed to do whatever necessary in order for this life to continue. That's something inbuilt in ourselves, which we cannot get rid of. Only thing we can cut off this desire, the wanting, by understanding the truth, and that was the ultimate goal of practicing Buddhism in order to be an Arahant. Right? In order to be an Arahant, to cut off all the defilements. Even Buddha is an Arahant who cut off the defilements, but his level of wisdom and qualities were much more greater, so we call him a Sammasambuddha. The same with the Pacceka Buddhas, and all the Arahants also have removed the defilements, all the defilements, and they will be not born again. So therefore, the mind of every being is disposed to protect their lives. That is mainly due to the attachment to our lives, and this attachment starts from the birth, from the moment, few moments after the birth. According to Abhidhamma teachings, after 16 or 7 months, after 15 or 16 mind moments after the rebirth consciousness, this attachment arises in us. Right? This process starts. So this disposition is one reason. Though even though we are involved in some other activity, we are not thinking about ourselves, even we are not attached to ourselves in certain particular moments, due to our uneradicated defilements, the latent tendencies, the potencies, the anusayas, appahina kilesas, there is even we be not aware of it, we are still in constant attachment to this life. We are in constant attachment to this life, and we are also in constant fear of losing this. So that's why it suddenly pops up when something wrong happens. The same thing we discussed in the previous lecture, that if think about a person who is in a country controlled by the martial law. So we know that martial law has a lot of flaws, and in most of the cases, people are executed and treated very, very unjust. So, therefore, now in such a country, a person, now if you look into this from another perspective, from outside from that country, staying outside that country, we would feel that the people in that country, in that region, are very misfortunate, and they are in constant fear, and they are deprived of happiness. That is not to say that they are always in a constant sad state. No, they do enjoy their lives. They do play with their children, and they enjoy their family life. They talk with their friends. They go out with their friends. But always there's a constant fear shadowing them. That fear may not arise in their mind all the time, but whenever a certain incident happens, it starts to come up. It's ghosting your mind. That's because, for instance, now think about a moment they are having a party in a house, but suddenly someone comes and knocks at the door in a very forceful manner. So the first thought that comes into their mind is, this could be the army or the authorities have come to check the house or do something, that we are going to face a certain problem. But if someone comes and knocks at the door at a higher, very, very harshly in a democratic country where the law of rule is prevailing, then we would get upset. Who is doing that? Who has the right to knock at my door? That's the initial thought that comes, and most of the cases, the person would get angry because they would not. The initial thought would not be that the army has come and going to collect their family or to harm them or to take them into custody, because that thought is missing, because we are not in that constant fear. It's not eradicated, but still it's not in the surface. It's not in a close to the surface of the mind. But the people in the martial law country, they know this, and that fear is active. So what happens is suddenly it pops up. So if you are staying in outside this country, we would say that those people are in a misery because all the time anytime the fear would come up, and anytime they would face a danger to their lives. So, but that is not to say that they are in a constant fear all the time. Their minds have different wholesome and unwholesome thoughts coming up, but the fear is very close to the surface of the mind, so it could come up at any time. Now, take this simile now put ourselves in their shoes and consider, now take it in an overall sense. Now we have lots of dangers to our lives. We know that our lives could end at any time. Earthquake, a sudden bomb blast, flood, a tsunami, whatever. Give it a reason. Give it. You can give lots of reasons at any given time that the life would end. We know that. We are like aware of that. But that is not to, that doesn't mean that we are always contemplating on them. But whenever a sudden situation happens, if a thunder strikes close to us, we'll get frightened, terrified. So we know that our life could end at any time, and we are attached to this. We want to save it. Now think about the perspective of an arahant, because he has no attachment to this. Such fear would not surface in his mind. Even a disaster befall him out of a sudden. So now how would Arahant would feel about us? Now they would say that these Putujjanas are in constant fear, as we would feel pity about people who are in a country ruled by the martial law. For us, they are in a misery state because they are in constant fear, that they know that they could face any dangers at any time. At the same time, Arahants would feel about us because we are in a world where there's lots of dangers could befall ourselves, and we could end our lives at any time. And we are in constant fear about such misfortune incidences. So they would feel that we are in a constant fear, like we would feel about the people who are in a martial country, right? Country of martial law. So it shows that our minds are in. So what I want to mention is, due to these defilements that are not eradicated, And due to our mind being accustomed to certain defilements or certain habits, it's disposed towards that. It's disposed. So it's in a disposition to react. And we are not fully aware of that. So these latent forces has pushed our minds into that arena, and whenever the conditions arise, suddenly it pops up. The unwholesome mind comes out. So this disposition is one of the reasons that we could act out of a sudden. When we sense a danger, we quickly react. We don't even take a time to think about it. It suddenly comes out. Even this could happen to an arahant, because now if you go deeper into the philosophy, some sort of a disposition is there in every being. Even when someone gets enlightened, you cannot prevent that to some level. But our minds are disposed by defilements, due to defilements. Arahants not for some other reasons. So then what happens is, since our minds are disposed due to defilements, whenever the dangers appear, the mind frightens and the fearful thoughts arise, and we react out of a sudden. And you can see the changes in the body and the mind. We start to sweat, the heartbeat increases, the breathing speed increases, and we can see how the mind is restless. All these could be easily understood. Why is that? Our minds are disposed by defilements. But for an arahant may act out of suddenly, but his mind is disposed with due to different reasons. So that's the point that I added into this past handout. So we shall read it. When the mind reacts suddenly to unexpected stimuli, two main factors contribute to the response. Firstly, it is the continual influence of latent defilements. In minds of non-arahants, latent defilements persist, influencing the mind stream. These defilements, like the craving for life and preferences for aversion towards various objects, dispose the mind to instinctively respond to stimuli related to these defilements. For example, the craving for life prompts the mind to avoid threats to life, and similar predispositions are found for liked and disliked objects, resulting in instinctive actions. Another point that we didn't talk last time is the super mindfulness. If someone is very highly mindful, this also disposes the mind towards the wholesome side. That's also could be an instinctive reaction. Now think about now as monks we face this most of the times. So now we are not supposed to do certain activities, and we are mainly supposed to not physically touch a female. That's one of the main characteristics of a monk life, and nuns are not supposed to touch males. So that is a celibate life. Now, if someone is very strict on this rule, and if someone really wants to practice this rule, now in instances where we travel within the crowds, there are occasions that we may touch or we may get in contact with a female. It's obvious, you cannot avoid that. So what happens is, if the monk is very mindful and very attentive to his sila, whenever such an incident happens, suddenly they would react. They would suddenly jump away or go away. That's not. It's due to mindfulness. It's the wholesome thought to save your sila. So these kind of reactions are mainly due to the disposition of the mind, due to mindfulness or the wholesome qualities. So it's possible that we may react out of a sudden with a wholesome thought in order to save our sila, in order to do something good. That is mostly due to having very high super means very high level of spiritual qualities, and taking things seriously. If someone is serious about his conduct, his or her conduct, if someone is serious, then they would not take things lightly. So whenever they feel something is harming their practice, or something is against their practice, something could be a potential danger to their practice, they would suddenly react to this. Then someone can ask the question: Isn't it the fear of losing the practice, or isn't it the attachment towards the practice? I don't think so. It can happen out of attachment towards the practice. There are various ways the mind could react. Mind could hold the practice, but in most of the cases, this is a wholesome thought. is a wholesome thought, and he's a wholesome disposition that we see especially in monks. We can see this because the rules are abandoned. Rules are abandoned, and there are many ways that you can break rules in monks. Monks' rules can be breached, even regarding trees, soil, the properties of the sangha, and distribution of properties, and how could we converse with lay people, and regarding certain requisites. So monks, if someone is very serious about the sila, he is very attentive even to what the layperson speaks when he is dealing with the layperson, because there are some questions that we cannot answer. If you answer to certain questions they pose, that could lead to a violation of a rule. So being very mindful is very important in order to protect the monk's sila. So if someone is very super mindful in this regard, obviously they would act out of a sudden whenever they sense that something is happening that could harm his virtue. So this is another instinctive, I would call it an instinctive reaction, because the mind is disposed to react to that. On the other hand, when one diligently trains the mind and maintains strong commitments to ethical standards, the mind becomes predisposed not to violate those standards. In such cases, the mind responds instantly to avoid situations that may tempt to breach of ethical conduct. This swift response is a result of the mind being influenced by wholesome qualities, and the positive reactions manifest only when the mindfulness is present. When the mindfulness is present. So normally this kind of reactions are present only when the mindfulness. Even someone is serious about his sila, whenever he is not mindful, this may not happen. Whenever he is not mindful, such reactions may not happen in him, right? So now we are moving on to today's topic. I took half an hour to recap because I wanted to add something and to also to give some new perspective. So habitual activities and actions driven by vasana. Habitual activities. Activities and actions driven by vasana. These are the two topics we will talk about. Habitual actions driven by vasana. Habitual actions are things that we used to do for a longer period. It can be a practice coming from past lives or something that we train in this very life. Now, most of the cases when we have certain habits, and if our mind and body is used to that, we may not even know that we have initiated such an action. The person may recognize it after some time that he is doing such and such activity. That's the nature of a habitual action. Sometimes we do it with awareness. In most of the cases, habitual actions starts, and after some time, we recognize I'm doing that. And we can see this when you train yourself. There's another point. It may fall into instinctive actions as well. But another habitual, something that is closer to a habitual action, is when a sportsman trains him or herself. Sportsman or sportswoman trains himself or herself in the sport. Now you have to have very quick responses. You have to act very quickly, swiftly. When the other opponent is acting or coming towards him, or he's bowling towards him, so you have to act out of a sudden, and you have to train not only the mind, even the physical body has to be trained in order to react in such a short period. The reaction period has to be lessened. That's how you could face the opponent and perform well in a sport. And overall, all the time, the reacting speed reduces and things are getting faster in the world. So then what happens is, if you ask from a sportsman, all the activities that he does in a game, a professional sportsman, all the activities that he does in a game, that he doesn't know even. He's not paying much attention, but for example, sometimes after playing a shot, he recognized that he did it. He cannot be aware of what was going on in him. Suddenly it happens. So that's how they have trained the mind. So when you train yourself, when you practice the mind, body and the mind for a longer period in the same routine, we tend to do these activities and we are not aware of that. So sometimes some people have the habitual activities of shaking their legs while they are sitting, which is not considered as very nice in social standards, but sometimes they shake their legs, right? And sometimes they do certain physical activities which they are used to do, and they are not aware of this. But in terms of Abhidhamma, these activities are done deliberately. They're done deliberately. So that's why the point is, you can prevent them if you pay a lot of attention and be mindful. So habitual activities, though they seem to be done unconsciously, they seem to be done while the mind is somewhere else, but these activities are deliberate activities. We would not call them voluntary. Voluntary means that you do it having thought in terms of, if you follow the standard meaning of the voluntary activity. These are habitual activities. So they are also deliberate. So the consciousness not being aware of the incident doesn't mean that the actions happen out of consciousness or without the involvement of consciousness. So that's the first point that we want to discuss. First, 166. Sometimes beings engage in their habitual activities almost automatically, as if they are carried out involuntarily. Even the individuals themselves recognize their involvements only after they have initiated the activity. At times, they may not even realize that they perform such an activity. In these instances, the lack of attention to their actions does not imply that the activities occurred unconsciously. Beings might be unaware of their actions because their bodies and minds are accustomed to these habitual acts. They carry out these activities voluntarily, we would say deliberately, supported by kaya viññati and vaci viññati. Despite the seeming automatic nature of habitual activities, it is crucial to note that they are deliberate actions, as deliberate effort can bring about a cessation of these habitual behaviors. It's possible that these activities could be prevented or inhibited. It's possible. So it shows that if you train your mind, you can prevent such activities. It means they're done with mind. That's why it could be prevented. That's very simple. It's a very simple argument. One may say, is it so simple? Yes, it's a simple argument. If you can train your mind and stop certain activity, that means it's a big indicator for the fact that the mind is involved in such activities. That's why you could prevent it. So there is one way or another involvement. There's an involvement in one way or another. So that's why you could prevent it. So these habitual activities are also deliberate. Then comes the vasana. Vasana is something very special in our mind stream. That's something which is disposed. Disposed means not in the sense of being ready, not in the sense of being in a position of disposition. This is like some things that have been left over in the mind stream. When the defilements, now these are mind stream, for instance, we have the defilements that are not eradicated, which we call appahina kilesa. Appahina kilesa. These appahina kilesas, which are not eradicated, sometimes comes into the surface as pariyuttana. If they frequently activate, and comes into mind movement or manifest as mind movements, what happens? They become stronger. Whenever these consciousnesses pass away, they leave a certain trace. They leave a certain trace in the mind related to the same defilement. And this is more deeper than the defilement itself. These are we call the word doesn't come. That's something that is left behind, right? Something that is left behind. So even if the effects are found, when the appahina kilesas are arising in the mind frequently, and when these mind moments pass away, they leave a certain trace or something that is left behind or not fully eradicated. It doesn't mean that the defilement vanishes. It leaves something disposed here that we call as vasana, which is much deeper than the defilement itself. So what happens is, now these defilements, now when someone attains the arahanthood, for example, when someone attains the arahanthood, one becomes arahant, AR, he or she eradicates these appahina kilesa. Appahina kilesa. But there is also something called vasana. The residual, something that is left away. So then what happens is, when Arahanta Magga eradicate these defilements, it cannot reach this deeper level to remove the vasana defilements. It cannot cut away the vasana kilesas. So Arahant removes the appahina kilesas, but the remnants of these defilements still be in the mind stream. The remnants still be in the mind stream. Remnants of the defilements. They are remnant effects, we can call effects, or some kind of they do influence the mind very greatly, but they cannot cause a rebirth. That's the difference. Appahina defilements can cause a rebirth, while vasana, the remnants of these defilements that are deeply ingrained in our mind as a result of the defilements, cannot be eradicated. You cannot eradicate them. Arahant doesn't eradicate. If someone eradicates them, he becomes a Samma Sambuddha, fully enlightened being. And then, so what happens is, now think about a person, now Putujana person, his appahina kilesas are present, vasana is there. So all of them causes the mind to react. Now when a certain object, when they meet a certain object, these vasana, the defilements, all influence the mind and they react to it. They act with a defiled mind, unwholesome mind. That's obviously what happens to us. Right? When we are not able to cope with the object, we are not able to deal with the object wisely, we would react to it out of a defiled mind. Now what happens to an arahant is, if the vasana is quite strong, they all have vasana, they cannot completely eradicate the defilements with the remnants. Only a Samma Sambuddha can do it, even a Pacceka Buddha cannot do it. Now, when the arahant's mind is pure, even though its mind is pure with latent defilements, the remnants are still there, the effects are still there. So what happens is, these effects sometimes may influence the mind. They do influence the mind. So when the vasana is influencing, the mind is not defiled. Now here, if the kilesas influence the mind, this is a defiled state. This is a defiled mind. Why is that? The akusala is present here. Akusala is present. But only when vasana is influencing the mind, this is an undefiled mind. It's a Kriya Chitta. Kriya Chitta, functional consciousness. It's pure, but influenced by certain defilements. This doesn't happen all the time. It may happen rarely. It may happen rarely. It's not very common. It's not very common. That's why we seldom see, to be true, these days it's very hard to find such a person. So even they are arahants, it's very seldom to see them behaving abnormally. Normally, an arahant has a good standard in his ethical conduct and the way of behavior and manners. That's obvious. That's why a person would feel a lot of devotion even seeing such a person, and you can feel this is a special one. When you meet an arahant, obviously you will feel that there's something special here. The way of behavior, the way he talks, the ideas, how he is affected, how he reacts when you separate from the person, when you meet someone, maybe after a long time. So all these reactions are different because he sees the world differently. He has had a deep understanding about the life. A Sotapanna would also be different, but sometimes he may manifest anger and lust as we do, but not to the extreme level of breaching the rules. So more you go higher in the spiritual arena, more obvious the behavior would be. But in some cases, when the vasana is influencing the mind, it's possible that they may behave in a certain way, But if you compare it with the Buddha, I'm unable to give you a perspective on this because now our minds are always influenced by the defilements, appahina kilesas. So it's always different from that of an arahant, even while we are doing good deeds. Why is that? It's been influenced. But when the arahant's mind is occupied or influenced by vasana, that influence has to be constant in one way. It has to be constant. So if you compare the mind of an arahant with a Buddha who is missing the vasana, I think there should be some difference, and that's why it's mentioned in the Dakkhinavibhanga commentary when Sariputta is giving a donation to the Buddha and Buddha is giving a donation to Sariputta, what donation is more great? Not in the sense of giving results, because both of them are arahants and they would not experience any results, but what would be the powerful and more glorious deed? Obviously, it's the Buddha's one. Buddha is giving to Sariputta. Buddha is having a pure mind, and Sariputta is also one who could increase the qualities of the result of the donation. At the same time, Sariputta is given to Buddha, who's the greatest person who could accept a donation, and his patiggahaka sampatti is very high. But Sariputta's mind is lower to that of Buddha. So which donation is glorious according to the commentators? Buddha giving to Sariputta is more powerful. One reason for this, two reasons for that. First is that his knowledge about the donation is very vast than Sariputta. And the next factor is his mind is pure. So then the question comes, isn't Sariputta's mind is pure? Yes, he's fully freed from all the defilements, but his mind is influenced by vasana. So this statement shows that there is a constant influence of vasana into the minds of arahants even. It has to be, technically it has to be, if our minds are always influenced by appahina kilesa, and that's why even while we are doing a good deed, that good action, it becomes a karma. It's been constant influence. We cannot stop this influence. There's no javana chit. Now we cannot prevent our wholesome, unwholesome activities being influenced by being influenced by the appahina kilesa. You cannot do that. We cannot make a good deed and that would not give a result in future. It's impossible to do that. Because even we are unaware of that, the defilements are influencing them. So if we take this same analogy, like same formula into the mind stream of an arahant, When the vasana is present, prevailing in them, it's also applicable to Pacceka Buddhas, their mind is a constant influence. But sometimes they can be strongly influence the mind. So it's not just, it's always influencing. There's no doubt about that. There's a certain influence. I may draw it in a different way. There's certain influence, but if they strongly influence directly the mind, at that time, abnormal behaviors may appear in an arahant. Abnormal means abnormal to their standards. What does it mean? They may act as if they are acting with a defiled mind. Why is that? These remnants are of a defiled natures, remnants of defilements. So when the remnants of defilements are influencing, they may act as if defiled. But they are not actually defiled. They are not actually defiled. It's a very strange state. It's a very strange state. Now, can this happen to us? Obviously, it can happen. For example, there can be an occasion where we, as Putujjanas, behaving, acting with a wholesome, undefiled mind, but it may manifest to others as it is defiled. If it could happen to a very pure mind, obviously it can happen to us. There's no doubt about that. There's no argument in it. The vasana influence is obvious in ourselves. It's not that only vasana is affecting us after we become arahants. No. What happens is after we become arahants, only vasana is affecting us, not the kilesa. In our cases, both the vasana and the appahina kilesa are affecting our mind stream. So there can be an occasion a putujjana may act with a wholesome mind, but it may appear to others as he is arrogant. It doesn't care about them. Or he may still, other may feel that he is acting out of lust or anger. That's possible. But it's possible that his mind is pure. I'm not saying that all the times when you feel someone is acting weird, that should be due to a vasana or appahina kilesa influence, but there can be possibilities. But in our case, most of the time, when such behaviors are present, in most of the time the defilements are there. But here it's impossible. Here it's impossible. So when the person, the arahant, is acting weird, the only conclusion, only possible assumption or the possibility that is present that could have happened is the vasana influencing the mind. So vasana brings an unwholesome flavor to the mind while the mind being highly pure. Now, can this be prevented? There were instances where there was an arahant called Pilindavacha who used to talk to other monks, the outcasts, the low junior monks, bhikkhunis and the lay people. On some occasion he used to call them outcast, and it was very difficult for him to prevent. He didn't do it in purpose. He's a very intelligent person, one of the greatest disciples of the Buddha, and he had a title, if my memory is the ones who were in the foremost in the lion's roar, who was very confident about his own attainments. And he was very, I think he was Pilindavacha, not Pindola Bharadwaj, I forgot, yeah, Pilindavacha. He was the one who was being mostly desired. He was mostly desired by the deities, if I assume my memory was correct, right? So it's Pilindavacha. If I go and double check it. Yeah, Pilindavacha. He was actually the most adored by the gods, most dear to the gods, like because gods, there were a number of disciples of him, in his past disciples of his past lives that were born as deities, and they loved him so much. They loved him so much. But ironically, he was calling the low ranked, the junior monks, bhikkhunis, and the lay disciples outcast on some occasion. It was very difficult for him to control. He didn't do it in purpose. He was a very intelligent person, but it happened. It happened that he couldn't control himself. He couldn't control himself. So when this was informed to the Buddha, because it was not very nice, and he came from a Brahmin family, and that could have, now other monks would have had a doubt that he's still showing his Brahmin standards, even having becoming a monk. He's still calling us the outcast, because it was natural for some Brahmins to call other lower ranked people in that manner. But he never talked to Buddha of outcast, surely. No, he didn't talk to a senior monk of outcast. He was aware of that. But when it comes to talking to lower ranked ones, like the junior monks and the bhikkhunis and the lay people, sometimes he called them outcast. He calls them outcast. So, and when this was informed, the Buddha said, he doesn't do it out of a bad mind. He uttered a Dhammapada verse even, saying that you should not judge the person in some instances from what the nature he behaves. So in his case, what happened was he was calling the others outcasts because of his strong conceit that he developed in past lives. According to the story, he was born as Brahmin for 500 lives continuously before the last life. 500 lives continuously as a Brahmin. Maybe it's in the human realm, taking out Devarams, I'm not sure about that, but the story goes that he was a Brahmin for 500 lives. So what happened was, he had developed that conceit and looked down upon the other lower caste or lower ranked people, and they used to call them outcasts, and this became a habit. Even in that life, he was a Brahmin. And it was a habitual thing. So, but this could be prevented. Now, I don't think personally when he's giving a Dhamma talk to the junior monks, he would have called them also, surely. He would not start the Dhamma talk, Vasala outcast. No, he would not, because then if you are giving a Dhamma talk, he's very mindful about it. So, Arahants are always mindful. Mindfulness means they doesn't let the consciousness to occupy any unwholesome thoughts. The mindfulness is there, but sometimes they may not be aware of what is going on. It doesn't mean that he's fully aware of everything. Awareness is there, but not fully deeply aware of what is happening. So it's possible. So Arahants do have mindfulness, but if they don't pay attention to that. So if someone takes that mindfulness is always attentiveness. No, mindfulness is the force that doesn't let the mind to go into the unwholesome side. That's the real definition of mindfulness. It's not the present moment awareness. There's no such a definition of mindfulness in Theravada. Not such a definition in mindfulness Theravada. That can be used as a technique. That's a different case. So if they are not fully aware, because sometimes Arahants may not be fully aware of their activities. That happens when they are chanting certain sutras, and even they are contemplating their jhana factors after emerging from the jhanas. They may do it as a habitual thing, and those chittas may be jnana vipayutta even. That's possible, but this doesn't happen to Buddha, it says. This doesn't happen to Buddha. So what happens was, now here Vasana was influencing. So it shows that technically the Arahant's mind is always influenced by Vasana. He cannot prevent that. It is something that is happening unconsciously. That's what happens to us. Our mind is constantly influenced by Appahina Kilesa and Vasana both. So that's why all the deeds that we do, good deeds, becomes karmas because of this influence. So in Arahant's case, the Appahina Kilesa is removed, the Vasana is still present. So still, this is still constantly influencing. But in some occasions, that influence can be very strong. So it manifests as he's doing the activity with a defiled mind. That's what happened to Pilindavacha. So Buddha said, monks, he doesn't have dosa in his mind. He clearly stated, there's no dosa in his mind. He's acting out of habit. The habit was 500 lives continuously prior to the final life, being a Brahmin, having developed all this conceit. So what happens to a Buddha now? Even now, Vasana is influencing this. But this is a deliberate activity. That's what we have to understand. When our Appahina Kilesas are influencing our mind, we are acting deliberately, the defilements are influencing. So likewise, the Arahant is acting. Now what happened to Pilindavacha once, now he was going on the road, he was going for Pindapata, and he suddenly met a person who was carrying some medicine, and he had a cart full of medicine. Pilindavacha asked, what is it? Pilindavacha, and he was a very friendly monk, and he asked, what is it? even I would not ask a person who is carrying some medicine, what is it, because it's not my business. But he asked, what is it? Then what happened was he called him, hey, outcast, what is it? That's the question he asked. So he couldn't prevent it. Now think about Pilindavacha giving a Dhamma talk to junior. He used to call lower rank monks outcasts. Yes, this problem was with junior monks, bhikkhunis and lay people. He never called a senior monk outcast because he knows how to address them. He never called Buddha the outcast. No, even a Brahmin would not call a king the outcast. They know they talk to the lower rank monk people. So this problem was the issue was there for him with junior monks, bhikkhunis and lay people. So now think, if he was giving a Dhamma talk to junior monks, he would never start the talk, hey, outcast, Vasala. No, Avuso. He would start the word Avuso. It doesn't mean that all the time he speaks, he called them outcast. No, occasionally. That means it's out of his control. When he's not fully aware, habitually he talks. This kind of behavior is not found in Buddha's life. Buddha is always constantly aware and he is not influenced by vasana as well. Now, what happened was habitually he met a person, a lay person, and he was a Brahmin also in his life. Surely he's a very high class person, and I don't think that Brahmin thoughts would have influenced him. But habitually, and he's a lay person, he's a monk, and he asked, hey outcast, what is in your cart? Then he said excrement of, or he said mice dung. Then the person got angry because someone called him the outcast. And the story goes that it actually happened to be mice dung, and then he had to ask for forgiveness, and it again became medicine. So the miracles did happen there, according to the story. So now Pilindavacha's case was, now he couldn't control himself. So what happens? This was influencing him, and those activities were, now he talked deliberately. He wanted to inquire what is in the cart and what he was carrying. So this is a deliberate intention of inquiring what is it. But what happens was, while the thought of inquiring was there, the manner he inquired was influenced by vasana. That was gathered due to defilements in many past lives. So the manner of asking, he never had the thought of hurting the person. He never had the thought of hurting. He didn't look down on the person. Now, if this was done by a Putujjana, there's very high possibility of us thinking that he acted out of conceit and he looked down on the person and he didn't want to respect the person. But this could have also happened to a real Brahmin who is a Putujjana out of a wholesome mind, because habitually he talks. It may happen. It could happen. I know some monks have these habits. Their verbal behavior is very disturbing, but they have a pure heart, where they used to talk like that. So Pilindavacha used to talk outcast to lower rank people. So this habit influenced his mind. Intention was to inquire, what is it? It's a good thought, it's not harmful thought, it's just inquiry. And the way he inquired was influenced by the vasanas. So when it would have happened with if it was a Putujjana, there is a very high possibility that we may think that he did it out of defilements, but please get to know, now it could have happened to a Putujjana even with a wholesome mind. So then even though the vasana is affecting the mind, it affects the manner of behavior, but the action itself is deliberate. Action itself is done, deliberately done. Chetana is there. So even someone behaves out of vasana, the actions are driven by vasana, these activities are deliberate. And it happened to a monk who ruminated, who took the food into his mouth and the cud, he ate it back like a cow. And Buddha said that was due to him being born in as an ox for many lives, right? So then the final point is, now Samma Sambuddha eradicate this vasana. The influence of this vasana is constant. So therefore, Pacceka Buddhas and Arhants do not reach the level of omniscience. That's the one fundamental given in the Theravada teachings. What is the reason why Arahant or a Pacceka Buddha doesn't reach the omniscience, doesn't become a Sabbanyu, the one who can know anything, everything, is because of Vasana. Their mind is influenced or limited by the influence of Vasana. Our minds are limited, so we cannot see the Nibbana. As long as we have the full range of ignorance with Sakkaya Ditthi, they may not be lessened, if they are not weakened to a very high degree, or if they are not eradicated, we will not be able to see Nibbana. How much you think, how much intuition you have, how much imaginations you made, how much learnedness you have, doesn't matter. The mind is limited. You cannot break that limit and go and see the supra-mundane realities that are beyond our scope, because our defilements are delimiting us. The same way, Vasana, now Arahant has broken this shell and gone out of the mundane sphere and have experienced the supra-mundane levels and who have attained such states. They have broken this limit, but still they are delimited by Vasana. So what happens? They have range, the limitation in their knowledge. A Buddha has broken even that. A Samma Sambuddha breaks the Vasana barrier. And their mind comes into full efficacy. That's the word I like to use. The full efficacy. It's 100% effective. Efficacy is there. It may increase and decrease based on the level he is in. Based on the level he is in. When he's performing the twin miracles, his mind is very active, not in the sense of knowledge. Activeness is very, very, very high. In other occasions, it's quite low compared to that level. And when he is acting with the Sabbanyata Jnana, it's very effective. So that's the Buddha's scope. We are not be able to completely apprehend it actually. So, but somehow he has broken this shell of Vasana and come into a state of omniscience, that he could know anything that he likes, right? So, but the thing is, Vasana, the actions driven by Vasana, though they seem to be fully driven by Vasana, what happens is the intention is their deliberate actions. Vasana modifies the way the action is done, modifies the way, the manner the action is done. So it appears to others as the Arahant is working with anger while his mind is pure of anger, while he has no defilement tendencies of anger. He may appear to be acting out of lust while he doesn't have any trace. A trace means any defilement left related to raga, but the remnant effects are present. So they are the ones who are influencing, and this Vasana may not cause a rebirth, will not cause a rebirth. That's the next point. It hinders the Arahant's mind. It delimits the Arahant's mind. It doesn't give a rebirth. That's the next point. And in some books, some commentators have called this Vasana Kilesa. Vasana Kilesa means it is a hindrance to the mind. And according to Dakkhinabhanga commentary, Sariputta's mind is defiled, less pure than the Buddha's mind. The only assumption we can have is it's because of due to the influence of Vasana. Buddha's wisdom is vaster than Sariputta, and the Buddha's mind is purer than Sariputta. What is the purity? The extra purity the Buddha has over Sariputta, because his mind is not influenced by even the remnants of defilements. Yes, so we shall read this and conclude the class. 167. Certain verbal and physical activities find their roots in the Vasana Kilesa present in the mind stream. Over an extended period, when Anusaya Kilesas frequently surface to the Pariyuttana level, they become stronger. The impact of these intensified defilements deposits in the mind stream, forming what is known as Vasana Kilesa. This can significantly affect the mind stream. Even individuals who have not attained arahantship or who have attained arahantships or Pacceka Buddhahood by eradicating all latent defilements may at times find their action influenced by these residual deposits of defilements. Consequently, some of their activities may appear to others as if carried out with unwholesome minds. despite being performed with functional consciousnesses, Kiriya Chittas, liberated from defilements. It is difficult to inhibit activities driven by vasana, kilesa, actions influenced by defilements. But if great attention is paid if great attention is paid at it, is possible to prevent such activities. But whenever great attention is not paid at, vasana influences the actions even without the person being aware of that. It happens naturally, like a habitual action. For us, actions driven by vasana are also deliberate activities. They are done with the help of viññatti produced by volitions intending acting. Now, Pilinda Vacha, after he has talked someone about outcast, he may feel that he has done something. He made a blunder. He should have surely known that. But it's difficult for him to control. So others had to live with it. Others have to accept it. That's very unfortunate. He would not have liked it because he is a very intellectual person. He knows that using a word outcast is not good. But he couldn't control himself. So it was very, very pity state. There are stories about monks engaging in verbal and physical activities driven by vasana kilesa. In one instance, during the Buddha's time, a monk was known for ruminating. Like a cow, he takes the food in his stomach into his mouth and chews and swallows. Upon hearing about this behavior, the Buddha explained that the monk had been born as an ox in many past lives and the habit of chewing the cud persisted. So what happened? This is called Romantaka Bhikku, and he is a special allowance given for him regarding Vikala Bhojana. Buddha had to give him an allowance. Only for the Romantaka Bhikku who could not control him. This is only one person in the sasana who had this issue. And Buddha said there's no offense, even he does this in the evening. We cannot do that. If food comes to our mouth, we cannot swallow it back. We have to throw it out. We cannot swallow it. If it just comes to the throat and goes out of our control, there's no problem. But if it comes to the tongue and it remains in the mouth, now you cannot deliberately swallow it. You have to take it out. But for this monk, Romantaka Bhikku, he could take it into his mouth. He could chew it and swallow it back. But even for him, Buddha said, he should not take it out of the mouth and eat back. If he takes it out of the mouth, he should not eat back. Because it was difficult for him to control. It was a habitual thing that he was doing. Automatically it was happening. Because he was born as a cow for 500 lives. Ox for cow 500 lives. So there's a very special occasion where the only place where allowance was given for Vikala Bhojana, which is a very strict rule. Vikala Bhojana is a very strict rule. Buddha gave this allowance, and especially only to that monk, and even with restrictions. He cannot take it out of the mouth and eat back. He is very strict when it comes to Vinaya. There are stories about monks engaging in verbal and physical. Then an Arahant, Venerable Pilinda Vacha, occasionally referred to young monks, bhikkhunis and lay people as outcasts. This behavior stemmed from vasana effects of defilement such as mana, as he had been born among Brahmins for 500 lives years prior to this life. In those lives, as a Brahmin, he used to label people of lower caste as outcasts. Then the way Samma Sambuddhas eradicate defilements is unique. Their Maggajnana is supported by special spiritual qualities developed over countless eons. So the Maggajnana is so powerful. So when this Maggajnana of a Samma Sambuddha arises, it not only eradicated Appahina Kilesa, it also eradicated Vasana defilements, remnants of the defilements. Right, this Maggajnana can eradicate latent defilements along with their deposited remnants. We say savasane kilesehi eko sabbhe nighatiya. Savasana kilesehi eko sabbhe. So he got released, or he eradicated all the defilements together with the remnant vasana. So, no Arahant can do that. No Pacceka Buddha can do that. Hence, Samma Sambuddhas do not act influenced by vasana. Their mind is so pure, purer than that of an Arahant. It is also noted that Arahants and Pacceka Buddhas do not attain omniscience because vasana is present in their mind stream. Right? So, it says, the Udana commentary says, the omniscience is mainly due to eradicating vasana defilements. these are the things that I wanted to discuss, and it was a very interesting topic. We talked about vasana and how it's influenced the mind. And while the takeaway message, the message I want to send through this, express through this talks is even habitual activities and actions driven by vasana are deliberate. They are deliberate. Even though the vasana modifies, the habits modify these activities, like the manner is modified, but they are intentional activities. So now we talked about maintaining the posture. It's not an intentional, it doesn't need to be an intentional activity. While we are focused on something else, still the posture maintains. It's very, very clearly seen in meditation. We meditate sitting and we are not focusing on our postures, we are focused on our meditation object, but the mind is capable of maintaining this bodily posture. So maintaining bodily posture is a different procedure. Voluntary actions, we know, we think, and we attentively do certain activities. Then instinctive activities seems to be happening out of unconsciously, but according to Theravada, due to the rapidness of the mind, yes, we act intentionally, deliberately, and the mind, the main reason is mind is dispositioned, disposed to certain activities. Then habitual and actions driven by vasana, they also fall under the habitual category actually. They also are deliberate activities, though the habits are influencing the manner in which they are performed. Right. So next day we are moving into another topic, most probably the psychic powers, how the actions are performed when someone is using the psychic powers. They are also deliberate activities, but they are very special because they are not seen in daily life. And also we move into another topic, how the activities are influenced in a non-human obsession. When we are possessed by a non-human, how the activities are done. It's a very interesting topic. And then how certain activities such as salivation, sweating, all this happens due to the consciousness. And and how the activities are happening during dreaming, while dreaming. So it is a very interesting topic, analysis of Chitta Rupas. So I will conclude the lecture, giving the opportunity to ask questions.
Thank you. May I ask my question?
Yes.
We can see spontaneous reaction, and decisions are being taken by people based on extrasensory perceptions. I have read in a story, a Bible story, of that part of the story. A girl hears the name of a boy. That hearing that sound was enough to create a very intensive affection or love in her heart, because she had been the wife or concubine of that young person in previous life. It was it must have been a very rare thing at that time, and someone asked Lord Buddha, Buddha also they spoke a Gatha, Upe Sannivasena, Pachuppan Hitenava, Evan Sanjayate Pema, like that it goes on. My question is, now that spontaneous reaction in the mind of that girl, I think it is vasana. And I think the ordinary sense, I think, I may be wrong, I think it is a skill. Is it correct? So,
is it an what?
Skill.
Skill, vasana, what do you mean skill? Now you're talking about the Gosaka story, when the girl saw the boy. I don't remember, maybe when he heard the name, or for the first time she saw him, and the strong love, affection arose, and this Gatha is written in the commentaries actually. Pubbeva sannivasena pachuppanna hitenava evantang jayate pema uppalangva yathodakam. So affection can happen due to two reasons. One is pubbe sannivasena, something, because of living together in the past lives, association in past lives. Pachuppanna hitenava, present life affection. Evante jayate pemang, so the love arises. Uppalangva yathodakam, so what yathodake, like the lotus that grows in the water. Yes, so this is mainly due to the influence of past kilesas, and I would say it's mainly due to defilements influenced by together with vasana. So it's very difficult to say how our minds are influenced. Is it only with vasana or defilements? I think both are influencing our minds. And yes, so what was your question about the skill?
I think in ordinary sense, the ability to react based on extrasensory perception is a skill.
But in that case, skill, that story is not about a skill, right? It's something that even she couldn't control.
Yeah, that is correct.
Right?
Beyond her control,
it was something that she couldn't control, that it arose in her, and she was also not aware what is going on in her, but somehow she knew she's attracted to this person. So then extrasensory, so what do you mean by a skill? Like, so yes, sometimes skills may come from past lives, certain skills. Yes, I know that. We can appreciate that. What do you mean by extrasensory senses?
The extrasensory perceptions, I think something like intuition, ability to understand something with spontaneous ability, having spontaneously ability to understand something.
Yeah, this is a skill that is mostly, in most of the cases, such skills are due to influences of past lives, according to the teachings. Yes, yeah. You can call them a skill, but not every influence from the past lives would be a skill. But in that story, I think it's something that she couldn't control. This would have happened to Yasodhara in many lives and Bodhisattva in many lives, because they got attracted very strongly. Even they would have not been aware of this, but because of living together for a long period. And Mahakassapa and Baddha Kapilani had this. These are more towards the affection side. Devadatta had the same problem with Bodhisattva due to anger. In some of the, even in the last life, he may have not known what's going wrong with him. He had a strong disliking towards the Buddha, and Buddha knew, because of his supernatural powers, he could know that this is something that happened 5 years back. He could trace everything to that region, that level, that moment. So, but Devadatta would not have any idea what's going on in him and why he's having so much grudge towards the Buddha. So that is a negative effect, like anger influencing the person. But at the same time, there can be some spiritual and positive influences from the past life, as you said. Some may have the extra skills of wisdom, the ability to penetrate into certain things with the wisdom, and such skills may be present in someone's lives. But so some may be able to understand others deeper than the ordinary beings, and some would be able to see the things in a broader scale, and this may differ from subject to subject. Some may be good in a certain skill or subject, while the other may have such intuitions in a different field. So mostly these are based on karma, aspirations that they have made, and the good deeds that they have accumulated, and also due to the influence of practices in past lives. So these positive things you can use as a skill. Yes, you can use as a skill.
Thank you.
Theravada.
May I ask my question now? Actually, that's about the habitual practices, so habitual actions which we have been talking about. Now, it is also said that the mind or the sankhana is inclined towards unwholesome deeds. So that actually comes in the form of habits. If I say that, is that right, is one of my questions. And expanding on that, so if you really look at Sila and Samadhi. With Sila, what we are trying to do is to change the habits into the wholesome stream. And with Samadhi also we try to do the same thing. So, and you mentioned that the mindfulness is very critical in identifying, and probably the level of mindfulness is highest in Samma Sambuddha. That is why he doesn't have even Vasana Guna. Arhats have developed it to such a high level, so they don't have the defilements, but they cannot avoid the Vasana. But when it comes to Puttagyanas and Seka Puggalayas, it's all about changing habits or cultivating new habits towards wholesome beings to take them to Nibbana. So that's first part of my question.
Yes, so when the akusala is present, your mind is disposed towards the unwholesome side. That's a natural tendency in every being. We can call it a habit because we have been practicing akusala for a long period in samsara. And mainly sometimes if we frequently, now everyone has all the defilements as putujanas. There's no deficiency in defilements in us. We are full-fledged defiled beings according to this. But still we may practice certain activities over the others. So then they become a habit. Then they tend to be a habit. So that habitual influence will be there. So when I refers to habits, it's not only the defilements, the disposition caused by the defilements with the reason for habits, but also having practiced a certain action for a longer period, and that too becomes acts as a habit. So that's what the two meanings that we can look into that. Then regarding when we are practicing sila and so forth, yes, what we do normally is we get rid of the habits and also the influence of the defilements. Even sometimes, even though, now think about a person who is not used to kill an animal for a long period. This is not a habit in him. So, but occasionally he may still kill a bee when this conditions threaten his life. So when we practicing sila, we prevent our habits. Also, we prevent the unwholesome activities popping up even occasionally and causing unwholesome deeds. So by practicing sila, we prevent the bad habits, and also we doesn't let the unwholesome defilements to influence our mind, and even to do unwholesome activities occasionally. We doesn't let it happen with sila. Then when it comes to samadhi also, the same thing. It's now we are getting rid of physical and verbal habits with sila. In samadhi, we get rid of mental habits of thinking or fantasizing or pondering on something uselessly and going on the vicious circle of the same thought patterns. We break these habits and we develop new habits of being focused on one object or within a range of objects, or having proper good wholesome thoughts. And when we do sila, when we break the unwholesome habits, obviously we are developing good habits. And that is also applicable to dana even. Dana is now, opposite of dana is we have the habit of possessing things for ourselves and to enjoy and to have that disposal. Like I have this kind of this much wealth and this much of money and for myself. That is a very pleasant feeling, secured feeling for an individual, and that's why beings who doesn't want even to lose the slightest wealth that they have accumulated, they don't want it to be lost. But with dana, what we do is we give it to someone for nothing. We are giving it to someone for nothing. So we go against the habit of possessing or holding for ourselves, clinging on to this to this wealth. So it's also by developing dana as a habit. That's what bodhisattvas do in lots of lives. They get rid of the habit of attachment, keeping the stuff. Yes. So when it comes to our practice, we get rid of all habits and we develop new habits. And for arahants, yes, they have already eradicated the defilements, but they can also develop certain good habits. They can increase, like they can develop their skills in meditation. They can develop their skills in Dhamma preaching. They can memorize the certain Dhamma by reciting frequently. And they can develop certain good habits, but there's no necessary of them inhibiting bad habits because they don't have anusaya kilesas. But vasana influence is there. So if a arahant is very, very strictly aware, if he tries, they may stop it to a certain extent, but sometimes there can be occasions that is out of their control. I think Pinindavacha's case was something very, very, very extreme. He may have struggled or he may have tried actually, but it seems like he was unable to do that. And what happened was the entire community accepted it. And when the Buddha said, don't get offended by him, this is the way he talks, then that would have eased the entire heat situation going in the Sangha society. That would have been a real case. It would have been a real incident among the monks. And with the Buddha saying that this is something that it's out of his control and he's a pure person and he's an arahant, that would have eased the entire situation. So I think in Pinindavacha's case, what happened was everyone else accepted him, and he also, being an intelligent person, would have understood that this is his capacity, that he's unable to control these things, and he had to live with it. So yeah, so if they are very, very Buddha's case, actually, yes, I also mentioned that he's fully aware and mindful. Actually, the real reason is he doesn't have vasana. When there's no vasana, even because he's very strongly attentive, it says that he doesn't get a jnana vipayutta chitta other than hasitupada. But so even his vasana is not present. So even if he didn't have full attentiveness, even it doesn't normally happen, still his mind would not behave abnormally like an arahant because the vasana is missing. So there's no reason for it to manifest there.
Thank you very much. But next question was actually about vasana, which I wanted to raise. That is, in the case of Venerable Pinindavacha, we talk about the bad side of the vasana which he inherited, and it is clear that probably, not probably, I should say, though he used the word vasala or the outcast, it's only the vachi vinyati that was created, but he had no intention for saying that. He had no intention of insulting the other party in saying that. So anyway, I am really asking about the different side of the vasana, because there are people who are very shrewd and inside they are very dirty and they have no benevolence at all, but still they become very, very popular. Because isn't that a vasana, sort of a vasana, probably due to some meritorious deeds or good habits they have had in the past, they carry that over. And similarly we can see there are people who are very pious, very disciplined and doesn't do any harm to anybody, but still they are very unpopular. That sort of characteristic which is quite visible among Puttadjanas, can it be said that it's due to vasana?
It's a very insightful question that you asked. Like, I haven't thought about it actually. So the person who is having an unwholesome thought or manners, but thoughts and very defiled person, but he is able to maintain a good manners and become popular. Obviously, it's a good thing because he's behaving well. But that another thing to look into this. I'm going to give an exact answer for this because I haven't thought about it. when he is acting nicely, now one more thing to consider is, yes, his thought is defiled and he has bad intentions. That doesn't mean that he is always acting with bad intention all the time, most of the time, and also he has bad objectives, agendas behind it. But he is very, very dear to the population, the people, and they are very popular among the citizens because they have good manners and so forth. So it seems like while he is behaving well, those have to be good, wholesome thoughts or pleasant thoughts, not the corrupted ones, because you cannot act pleasantly with a corrupt mind, with dosa, and so you cannot have a good mind with dosa, but one may have we may not be able to have a good manner while the dosa is present. But on the other hand, it's possible to have a bad manner while dosa is not present because of the influence of vasana. So I personally think that if someone is having different bad mean agendas but still behaves well in the society, we have to think about it in two different occasions. Like whenever he is doing the bad stuff, it's unwholesome deed, unwholesome mind is happening. But when he is behaving well to the society, it's a different mind. But that's a very good means, a very difficult skill to maintain, because how to change your character, like the way you present yourself. But in the Pirindavacha's case was, he didn't have intention of hurting the person, but the way he talked did offend the other person. The way he talked. So vasana is influencing the manner of the consciousness, the manner it does the activity, while the inside was pure. So there is some sort of a defiled nature. That's why in Dakkhinayabanga Sutta says Buddha's mind is more purified than Sariputta's mind. It's free from defilements. Defilement means defiled nature. So Sariputta's mind is somewhat influenced by this vasana kilesa. So compared to the Buddha's mind, it's little bit defiled, though he's fully free from anusaya kilesas. So but then one can ask the question, can it happen? Now, Pirindavacha's case, now think about that particular incident of talking to someone. It's a pure mind, it's a functional mind, freed from all the defilements, but the manner it talked, it presented the word, was nice, seems like it's defiled due to the influence of vasana, while the intention was pure. Now, we are talking about an incident, occasion, like the mind is defiled, the intention is defiled. Can it manifest a pleasant appearance, like pleasant? So the person is having real anger, but can he present it with a happy face or something like that? I'm unable to answer you directly, but at the moment my gut feeling is it's not possible, seems not possible, because when the unwholesome minds are there, it's very difficult. But as you said, there are people who have these double faces, but on such occasions we have to think like he had unwholesome minds while he's planning the bad stuff. He has a good lobha mula or kusala chitta when he's treating the people well. So he is popular because of his manner of treating the people, because whenever the people get to know about his bad stuff, then he becomes unpopular. Now the question is, while having the bad stuff, can he manifest it? Can it get manifested in a good phase? I personally think that's not possible. But it's open to discussion.
Yeah, actually, while listening to you and while engaged in this discussion, what came to my mind was the disposition is what you use the word disposition, and disposition is what is influenced by vasana, but not the intentional action which is behind it. It's like a bitter pill being coated with a sweet covering. So there are people who are capable of doing that and putting out very sweet, very attractive, very nice disposition, but their intentions may be nowhere near what they show to the world. It could be probably to gain something for themselves, and probably to even they don't care about the destruction or the whatever the damage he causes with such actions.
Because there are some defilements called Maya and Satya defined in Buddhism, that this is possible to be done by the unwholesome thought itself. That's the point here. So is it because of a kusala vasana, or is it the nature of the defiled nature? Because Maya Satya it shows off things that he doesn't have, and also he conceals the faults that he has. So the unwholesome natures themselves have this capacity. The problem is it caused by vasana, or is it the unwholesome quality itself? So that's why I was reluctant to jump into a conclusion here, because but it's worth to give some thought, and I'll also think about it. Thank you for that insightful question.
Thank you very much, Swami Master. You always give us very deep and very broad knowledge and a lot of things to think about. Thank you very much, and Theravada Buddhism.
Okay, Theravada Buddhism. So we shall conclude our topic lesson today. We talked about habitual activities and actions driven by vasana, and also we talked how the instinctive actions would happen connected to the previous lecture, and all of them are deliberate activities done with the help of Chittaja Rūpas produced by consciousness with the influence of viññātis. So next day we are going to talk about how we would act while performing psychic powers. Okay. May this merit help us to attain the liberation soon, and also for the prolongation of the Buddha Sasana. Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.